this film tells a story. It's one of the most famous moments in British history, but the film sort of makes the case that it's possibly one of the more misunderstood moments in British history. Is that fair, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's sort of seeded in Robert Harris, who wrote the novel, his interpretation of this moment. And I think there's something really fascinating in reevaluating it. I think in story, like obviously we kind of tend to lean towards a more sort of simpler understanding of kind of hero and villain. And this is a story about compromise and sort of fallibility and kind of doing your best and not quite doing enough, which on one hand feels sort of very human and quite day to day. And that's why it's really interesting that it's within this kind of massive global sort of political historical setting, because it's quite a sort of, I think it's quite a human thing for a sort of monumental event to be this human. It's sort of a kind of strange dichotomy.
It is, because Chamberlain is known. If you asked about 100 British people say something about Chamberlain, they'd say appeasement. It would be critical. And actually, the case that you're making here, the world is very complicated. He was trying to do things for the right reasons. He was surrounded by people like your character who are also trying to do the right things for the right reasons. And some things don't quite go as planned, and that's just life. There's sort of quiet heroism about what he was trying to do.
I think it gives hope to fallibility, to like just sort of doing your best. And it's not necessarily to say that it was the right thing to do, but just also like, if you're in a pub and a fight breaks out or someone starts a fight with you, sometimes it's best to walk away. And that's not saying that that's what we should have done as a nation, but just that ethic is something that's not really looked at in story. I think it's always about bringing the fight and winning the fight, which of course is essential and has great value. But this side of things doesn't really get examined very much. So I think it's worthwhile to explore it for whatever people take from it.
You play a civil servant, and civil servants aren't often in films, perhaps because what they do is quite difficult and desk based. But we live in a time when how civil servants behave and how they're expected to behave under pressure. You film this while Trump was going along in America. It's being released now in this country where civil service parties and how you behave in Downing Street is in the news again. There's a pressure to that role of how to behave when you are a small actor in a big drama.
Yeah, I think it's a really sort of fascinating spot that Hugh is kind of like the bottom rung of the inner circle, so to speak. And within that room, he has no influence, but the fact that he's in that room sort of means that he must have some influence, and therefore a kind of personal responsibility to an idea or system that's bigger than yourself is, I think, something that, we're all grappling with and is always something to be looked at, especially in this day and age where everyone's every movement is scrutinized and is sort of being tracked, so to speak. Well, that sounds too sort of sensational, but kind of there's a record of, so to speak. And therefore I think it's important, because it makes you aware that everything you do, it's sort of whether it's in or out of sight, it's happened. It has actually happened, and the truth of that thing will reverberate. And so that's why the character of Hughes, quite interesting, like kind of was interesting to me, because he's sort of he means a lot, and yet he's also completely out of sight.
Yeah, and you can imagine what it'd be like. I imagine when I was watching this, it occurred to me the parallel. You could imagine being a junior civil servant in a big COVID decision-making meeting where what you say and do, you're part of something bigger than yourself. And what you do will live on. It'll impact on people's lives, and life and death matters with what you're doing. And that's true in the film, and it's true in things like that.
Yeah, I think, and as well, like, and again, I don't have a sort of answer for it, but it is just a sort of offering to this thing that I'm sure that, we all know, but maybe sometimes, at least myself sometimes forget that the people inside of these decisions, whether you agree with them or not, they are people. And maybe that also those sort of institutions that become nameless or kind of symbolic are usually run by people who have their own insecurities or desires or wants or ambition that, for better or for worse, will shape that symbol that becomes bigger than them. And to remember that, that sort of all of these the kind of the massive sort of the most powerful things in the world usually are based, there's people at the core of them. I don't have an answer for it. I mean, that's a very sort of sweeping statement, but that's something to be remembered, I think.
It is, and it comes very strongly in the film. I watched the film and thought, you must speak fluent German. And
good.
Yeah. You don't, do you?
No, no. My German is sort of like, hello, how are you, and then those scenes. But it was really fascinating. I love that the film is bilingual because that feels so true to the world, but also somehow, and maybe it's patronizing to say it's contemporary because as you see in the film, they were back then. But I think it's very the beautiful sort of multiculturalism of the world nowadays, and that therefore it feels quite contemporary to watch characters just slipping in and out of languages. And I think it's so beautiful when you're with people who speak multiple languages, when they suddenly drop into different languages. It's the most wonderful thing. And
I'm so jealous of people when they do it.
It's amazing. And it also, like, I think it's an important thing for the characters of the film, because the film's about many, many things, but there is a sort of thematic through line that is like, what is it to be English? What is it to be German as well? Yeah. And what is it to be, and broadly, how much does your national or cultural identity sort of play a part in your personal identity? And it was really interesting into having to learn the German, the way in which the German grammar changed the way in which you express yourself, and the German vocabulary changes your level of sort of expression in the way that sort of there are so many ways to talk round a point being English. Also, there is a directness to Germany, to Germans, which that I remember as playing Hugh, you kind of go, well, he's probably an Englishman who trips up on himself all the time. He probably really enjoys that he can only be strong and forthright in this language. Yeah. And that changes who he is when he's with those people. And that's why that friendship is what it is. And therefore it's then in dealing with, then on the political side of things, when countries deal with each other, it's just interesting to think of the kind of the human conversations that get had. How much does the culture of each country influence the decisions that then get made because of how we receive each other in those personal conversations?
Yeah, and how important translators sometimes are in that, when they try and bridge the gap between people when they can't speak the language.
Yeah, because
Sorry, go on.
No. So I was going to say, yeah, because in the script there'll be the English line. And Simone, linguistics and dialect coach, would kind of go, it's impossible to literally translate that into German because we'd have to use a different phrase for that, or vice versa.
Can you remember it still? So are you one of these people that just crams it the night? So just to be clear, you had to almost learn it phonetically. You don't speak German. You had to sort of learn these German words, sentences phonetically. Are they forever stored in your memory? Could you do it now?
I don't know. Some of them are. I learned them phonetically, but then in learning, I had to then sort of almost break that phonetic learning apart so that I could act with Yanis, so that I did know the order of the words, so that if he threw something, and I had to understand what he was saying beyond just a memory of the lines, so that when he did say something and he would change his performance, I could react. So I guess I knew enough to be able to kind of genuinely play the scene more than just one way.
And is it still in your mind now? It's a long time ago you probably did it. Can you close your eyes and give us a bit of a fake German?
No, there's
a real German, but
I'm going to say, like, I'll get it wrong now, but there's one line that got taken out, which was one of those ones which is a different thing. There was a line that says it was something like, he looks pretty strong to me, and in referencing about Hitler's position. And it was like, sitzt ganz schön fest im Sattel. And that translates to, he looks pretty strong in the saddle to me. Because it was a sort of very particular sort of Bavarian phrase about what I'm trying to say is like, yeah, he looks pretty solid as he start like in his job. Like he's, politically he's entrenched or whatever it is. And the only way to sort of say it in the sort of more kind of German Bavarian dialect was like, he looks strong in the saddle. And they're sort of being quite an almost folkloric phase. And it was, as
you've still got that. You can use that in a German bar anytime you like them now.
Yeah, just not talking about Hitler though.
Yeah, that's probably a wise thing. Just finally, this film's a kind of a plea for nuance, isn't it? And I wonder how it'll be received. I see you're not on social media because I presume you just don't want to live in a world where people shout at each other the whole time. Do you think we need and whether we'll ever get this, a recognition that nuance, people can be both good and bad, people can have good intentions but still fail, people can be flawed? That's the heart of this film, I think. Is that a plea that will get listened to, do you think?
That's really wonderful of you to say, and thank you. Like I think, yeah, it is so important that it's nuance, because that's, I think, kind of the polarity sort of breeds fear, because you have to pick a side, you know, and that polarity grows and grows and grows, because once you've picked one side of an argument or one version of yourself or of a perspective, the only way to sort of you can only lean into it further and further, for fear that an understanding of the other side will make you party to that opinion and therefore ostracize you from the group that you've committed to. And so therefore you can only choose to lean further in one direction, in whatever it is. And I think that's really dangerous, and that's what spreads people apart. So I think, no, I really hope that people embrace nuance, because at least a willingness to try to understand. And understanding doesn't mean you have to agree. There's no weakness in understanding someone. It's then gives you all the more, you feel all the more empowered to make whatever decision or choice you want to make.
It's a very good point, and it's such a great book, Robert Harris's book. It's a great film based on it. It's been lovely speaking to you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely to speak to you too.